Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of The Pursuit. My name is Garland Queck. Thank you guys for joining me today. For those watching for the first time, this show is about faith, ambition, and the journey of Christian entrepreneurs, leaders, creatives, artists, and really anyone chasing their passions in the heart of New York City. Here we dive into the stories of these dreamers and doers who are building, creating, and thriving here, all while staying true to their purpose. Whether you're an artist, an innovator, or an entrepreneur, this is a place where faith and ambition meets action, and we get to see it unfold. Today, we're sitting down with Reverend Dr. Sam Kim, who is the co-founder and pastor at 180 Church here in New York City in downtown Manhattan. He is a Harvard-trained ethicist and a Yale Hastings scholar with an extensive background in bioethics. He is also the author of A Holy Haunting, which we have here today. His first book, published in 2023, is that correct? Yep. And yeah, we have that here today, and we're going to talk about it a little bit more later. And he's joining us today to talk about his journey, challenges he faces, advice he has for creatives, entrepreneurs, people like me, people like you watching, and the things that drives him forward. So, Dr. Sam, welcome.
Hey,
Thank you.
Thanks for having me.
Awesome. So I always want to start each episode with a little intro of our guest. And I just gave a brief intro here, but if you could go into a little bit more detail in your own words, just kind of like a high level summary of your background. So maybe just take us back a little bit, like if you could tell us a little bit of your quick summary upbringing and how it shaped who you are today.
Yeah, I would say growing up Korean American, immigrated here in the States with my parents, 1987. I think I'm maybe the only pastor I know in New York that grew up in the Upper West Side or grew up in New York.
Oh, okay.
That didn't
Native
move.
New Yorker there.
Yeah, native New Yorker. Been through it all. The gangster rap, Biggie, Tupac, Beef, everything, the Cribs, the gang violence, all of that.
By the way, I've only met Pastor Sam a few times, so maybe actually once before in person. So I'm hearing a lot of this for the first time. So this is fascinating. Please.
Yeah. So I'm an urbanite at heart, but I would say if I could describe my life in a few paragraphs, it would be what John Eldridge talks about in the Sacred Romance. It's probably the most defining book of my life. And in the Sacred Romance, he talks about the message of the arrows, a dark message you receive about the world. And for me, growing up Asian, particularly in Korea, I think many of us identify with that probably, but perfectionism was sort of a message that I received very early on. I remember after immigrating in the 3rd grade, this is when I got the message. It was a very poignant, dark, but powerful message. I felt. I still didn't know how to tie my shoes. I was in the Upper West Side. I was putting my shoes on, and my father, a real perfectionist, saw me struggle tying my shoelaces. And he was so disgusted and so shamed that I didn't know how to tie them, that he basically, with some profanities and anger and yelling, kicked me in my stomach. So I fell backwards.
Oh, man.
And he said, "You're in 3rd grade and you still don't know how to tie your shoelaces." And the thing was, no one ever taught me because no one had time. We just moved. There was a lot of transition. And the message I got was the message of the arrows that lodged deep within the very inner part of me was, no one will teach you anything that you need to know. You're going to have to know it yourself. You have to control and manipulate the world around you, and you're going to have to know everything on your own. You are on your own.
So that's
So,
ingrained early on. Yeah.
So that message basically set me on a track of achievement so that no one could say anything. No one could say you don't know something. No one could point their finger, which led to an interesting journey of achievement. And I was at one point, the number one Ivy Doctor program in the country for education in terms of becoming, they select presidents of universities for Research One universities. There are 12 leaders in the cohort, like from Caltech, from vice presidents from Caltech. One of my, in my doctorate program at Penn was the managing director of Harvard Business School. So all these guys and ladies are being groomed to become presidents of Research One universities. And I thought, what better place to be at the height of a powerhouse of Research One academic, so no one could ever really say anything to you. You're in control and power. And that's sort of my story, how the gospel saves me from that message, and how, unlike my father, even though he was a good father, earthly father, the best he could be in many ways, and he failed, the heavenly father embraces us with a sacred romance. He loves us unconditionally. And where there's perfect love, only perfect love could cast out fear.
Yeah.
Right. So
indeed,
that's sort of my, if I could, I guess, describe my faith journey, the only thing strong enough to conquer this will to achieve and for the need for validation and protection is the fierce love of God, unconditional love of God. Sort of like John, the apostle, who doesn't put his name in any of the letters. He's the disciple whom Jesus loved, who began with wanting to nuke Samaria because they didn't want to listen to them, call fire down from heaven. And Jesus rebukes him. He goes from this fierce, thunderous guy to this tender, loving man of God. I think that's sort of my story. The tenderness of God has conquered me.
I mean, amen. Amazing. That's amazing testimony. I'm curious, at what point did you come to know God, to have a relationship with Jesus? It sounds, it happened at some point. Very, what's the word? Kind of maybe almost like encountering kind of way. But if you could take us through like maybe a little bit of a timeline, like did you grow up going to church at all? Like your family?
So to backtrack, my dad was an elder in the United Methodist Church. I think he planted as a lay leader one of the first UMC church in Seoul.
Okay.
And I actually visited the church 2 summers ago in Korea.
Okay.
It was one of the largest and most, I think, effective evangelism in terms of many people coming to Christ in that area of Seoul. I went to church growing up, but I don't think I really came to a saving knowledge of Jesus or the love of God until 16.
16.
Where
what happened then?
I always thought the church was kind of corny. Because if you have like investment banking kind of ambitions and success ambitions, or wanting to be, you want to have the swag, you want to be tough in an age of, the 90s was like the concrete jungle was really not what it is today. Central Park was dangerous. There were tons of gang violence. So you wanted to harden yourself in many ways through success and through achievement. I just didn't understand why they did sign language for like worship when there were no deaf people at church. It was like so soft compared to the Tupac and the hardcore rap that was sort of permeating culture. So I just thought it was kind of corny. I went because my parents told me to go, and I did go, but I think it really gripped me at one point because the Holy Spirit just I think knocked me off my socks. And one summer lock-in, I think.
Mhm.
I was like, I don't want to go, but I did. And that 24-hour period just kind of changed my life.
Wow.
Like conviction of my sin,
Yeah.
conviction of the love of Jesus on the cross. It was definitely supernatural.
Yeah.
And I just said to God, I surrender my life,
Yeah.
lifted my hands up and said, use me for your glory,
Mhm.
whatever that might be.
Yeah.
I surrender. And then after that, I think I had this insatiable hunger to read scripture. So I'd read like the New Testament every week,
Mhm.
like the whole thing
Yeah.
at Burger King, at McDonald's, with friends. And then I started telling friends about Jesus.
Mm.
And surprisingly, I think 45 people came to Christ. A lot of them went to Bronx Science
Uh-huh.
here, and
So it's like you're in high school,
yeah,
right?
yeah.
Telling your high school
Just
friends.
and
Yeah.
then because of that, people started coming to Christ. Like youth groups, pastors started inviting me out to speak, to give a testimony. Those people started coming to Christ. So it's kind of like I was initiated into the kingdom
Mhm.
through the work of the Spirit.
Mhm.
But the metanoia, the change of mind was very supernatural because that's not what I had in mind.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Wow. Amazing. And I guess those were the early beginnings of your public
Yeah.
speaking
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
signs of your calling, I
Yeah.
guess.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
And it was fun. It's like, oh,
Yeah.
finally the cool things that's written in the New Testament, I see them.
Mm.
Not the lectures and
Yeah.
the liturgy, which I didn't really understand at that time, but the cool things like, the power of God moving
Yeah.
and why people follow Jesus in the first place. And it was cool to see that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Awesome. Maybe just to fast forward a little bit and kind of like complete this section about your background. So you eventually you got into this area and you've become an expert in bioethics,
Mhm.
which I'm going to be honest, I don't know a lot
Mhm.
about, and maybe a lot in our audience not are uninitiated.
Mhm.
If you could kind of tell us, like, how did you get into that? How
Mhm.
did you? I know you mentioned this program that you
Yeah.
wanted to
Yeah.
go into, and you have an extensive, academic background,
Mhm.
Yale, Harvard, Penn.
Mhm.
If you could just kind of tell us about that,
Yeah.
that journey.
Bioethics is the ethical implications, the gray spaces in medicine. The Harvard Medical School sort of pioneered 30 years ago.
Okay.
So bioethics began at a classroom at Harvard,
Hmm.
and there were professors that were deeply disturbed by the ethical implications and the advancement of technology
Okay.
that was taking place 30 years ago.
Mm.
And now that has compounded with AI advancement and other technological advancements. So the pace in which technology moves and how that affects society is sort of what bioethics is about. But also there are many branches like distributive justice. Like my part had the burnout piece, clergy, ecumenical clergy and physicians. Like how ethical is it for a residency program to be so rigorous? A resident's marriage is at risk of failing if they can't complete the program and they have a newborn or something. Like, can human beings endure such rigorous programs and time into a system? And so we ask questions like, is this good for society? Especially if the second leading cause of death is medical error.
Mm. Okay. What's
But
the
then,
first leading cause? Natural, like,
well,
like.
heart disease.
Oh, okay.
But like,
Yeah.
so it's like,
That's.
if we eat a lot of bacon in America, so cholesterol, but so those implications we ask, or even like AI, or even the simple algorithms that we create, like Meta, Google, they don't sell products. Their product is us.
Yeah.
And when they collect all this data, who owns it?
Yeah.
Because obviously when you download the app, you're just checking everything because you want it. But in the disclosure agreement, you're agreeing to be spied on,
Yeah.
basically.
A number of
Yeah.
things. Yeah.
And then when you aggregate this data,
Mhm.
you know the person or a collective of humanity better than they know themselves, because behavior is the highest form of values.
Mm.
So when you know someone that way, you can exploit them
Yeah.
through marketing, through many other means.
Yeah.
So it becomes very dangerous. And obviously, we sort of see like an oligarchy taking place in the United States right now,
Yep.
where the tech giants are so large, they probably can't fail. They have so much money. I mean, like Apple has more cash on hand than the U.S. government.
Yeah. And many other countries.
Yeah, and many other countries. And I mean, Apple is not at risk of selling our data because they actually sell products that we buy. But Meta, Google, and everyone else, they don't have products. We're their products. So those are the things that we scrutinize and try to slow down if we can through legislation, through conversation. And that's what bioethics is. We are the champions of society.
Yeah.
And we go, wait a minute, or disparities, inequities in immigration, health policies, refugees, like those kind of things, all that play a part, societal good and right. So that's sort of what bioethics is.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Wow. Thank you for that high level understanding and overview. So that's what you like studied and became like this top tier expert on. How does that, and from my understanding, it's not even necessarily Christian related, right?
Yeah.
It's like these are secular ethicists,
yes,
that you're working with too. And like, where does that kind of start overlapping for you?
Yeah. It's interesting because Harvard is a place where a lot of people think that it's very secular, but Veritas is, Christ. It was started for clergy.
Yeah.
To train clergy in the colonies, the young gifted man that can preach the gospel in the colonies. The interesting thing about my time at my fellowship at Harvard, at the Center of Bioethics, was my work along with other clergy with the DREAM Act and immigration was a big part of why I was invited. When I met with the committee, and they said that we want to learn from you actually about distributive justice, because as you were talking about, like, how can we argue for the idea of distributive justice or equality or equity or the fact that anyone deserves anything, there are entitlements or even rights that exist in a vacuum of morality from a secularism. So atheism has no answer to morality or justice. As they dug deeper, they realized that bioethics, or the idea, sort of began with the Jesuits.
I see.
Because without morality, why argue? Without imago Dei, why argue for a categorical imperative? Like someone has this right, or this is unfair. Well, isn't an evolutionary framework simply the strongest survive?
Yeah.
And the strongest thrive? Yes, as we trace back, when you talk about a categorical imperative, like idea of justice or morality or equality, you need something there in the centerpiece.
Yeah.
So they wanted to glean from that, and why the Christian tradition, like MLK, argues for justice and the least of these. And so it's very fascinating how they were open to listen to those things, because they need an underpinning for the idea of justice, and they need every perspective.
You were able to provide that from your...
Yeah, I wrote a piece for my project at my fellowship at Harvard about refugees, from a Christian perspective, that they shared at the Harvard Medical School Center. And I put the gospel in it. Yeah, they shared it because it was a legitimate perspective or an application to justice.
Yeah.
So,
wow. And that, just to kind of cap off this section about your background, you eventually got into becoming a pastor, and so I'd love to hear about how you went from being in the this bioethics sphere to eventually feeling called to start a church and become a pastor, and which is what you are still doing now.
Yeah.
So if you could just take us to that part of the journey.
Yeah. So my affiliation with Harvard and Yale still exists.
Okay.
It's the presidency that I gave up and went into ministry. Because while I was being groomed to be a president of Research One, as I did the program, as I did projects with great colleagues at great institutions, one thing that really impressed upon my heart was, what is the point of becoming the president of a major research university? Is it my ambition? Yes, it's good. You could get high A figures, and I think if you did 1 year of presidency, you're guaranteed a lot of times pension for life. So all those things are attractive and compelling, but in the end of the day, it was a value thing for me, because you're in meetings constantly, administrating and dealing with competing commitments and interests at faculty and the board and all that, and raising money. And ultimately, it came down to this. My purpose and goal as a president of a Research One university is propaganda to make my institution great. Through whatever levers or means. We've seen Columbia sort of lie about their data.
I heard about that.
And the president being fired. But that's what the U.S. education system mainly is. We raise tuition, we sell a brand. Even the education is pretty similar. Anyone driven could get the same education, but we're selling access, right? So, and I'm learning at this place that I'm perpetuating inequity by doing so, by going to the most lucrative place. You're at an Ivy institution, all this kind of thing. And then I'm like, what would Jesus tell me? And I'm not saying that that's for everyone. You can be at the workplace and glorify God. But for me and my conviction, it was just like, it just seemed futile to propagate, to, sell the institutions being great when maybe they're not that great for society. And I was like, I want to tell Jesus I made him great. And so that was the transition. It was a hard transition. It was hard to let go, honestly.
It was your dream. You, like, from what you said.
And you're there. You're there. You're there. Everything that you want is right at your fingertips. But it's like, you know what? If I'm going to make Jesus great, it's going to have to be the local church. It's going to have to be discipleship. It's going to have to be. And because of where I've been, I understand the plight of the pressures of those in medicine and those in the academy and those in banking. I understand. And I could help them become more like Jesus. And they won't be able to tell me, like, you won't understand. I do. I've been there. I understand. And I felt like becoming a friend along the journey was my new dream. Walking with those like me that are trying to find validation through achievement, or to really because of the message of the arrows in their lives, killing the sacred romance. Like you went to media from finance, telling stories, embracing the sacred romance, embracing,
trying to,
and for me, it was very fulfilling at the same time, because you're told from a very young age as an Asian American person that achievement, money, and status is everything. Even though that's not what Jesus teaches at all. And you're in the church, but and that's what I learned through the last 30 years being in the church as an Asian American. You can be a born again Christian, but yet still find yourself in profound cultural captivity to a system that is totally against the Spirit's work, and a spirit that will bring death. In total cultural captivity, even though you're born again, even though you're regenerated. And those are the systems that Jesus meant in Luke 4, I come to set the captives free. And that's my new mission of setting the captives free, like Jesus. That anointing to set the captives free Yeah.
Amazing.
And bind up the brokenhearted.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Amazing. Just going back real quick, I just want to get out there also. When did you found 180 Church?
About a
So
decade ago.
okay,
Yeah.
got it. And when you decided to, go, you were convicted to leave the presidency and go into the ministry. What was like the next step for you there? Like, did you think, oh, I need to go to seminary school, or need to, how do you become a pastor?
Yeah. I
So-
mean, you definitely go to seminary.
Yeah.
Yeah. And you get training. And I think eventually we began a Bible study
Okay.
in the city, and students started gathering together.
Yeah.
And eventually we formed a core,
Yeah.
and then launched the church. And friends of friends began to come to Christ.
Yeah.
Now those guys are no longer that young. They have at least one or two kids,
Yeah.
and gone into medicine or tech in the city, just like sort of like many who find themselves in the story here in New York, that hustle. And I think it wasn't such a supernatural thing. I think it was just like discipleship, basic discipleship.
Mm-hmm.
My wife and I just began to meet with people, and we didn't incorporate ourselves to a denomination. We affiliated ourselves with like major movements like Lausanne, Wheaton, Billy Graham Center,
Okay. Yeah.
that we had connections to. And we raised our own money. We didn't do part of a denomination. We're just an ecumenical church that's bent evangelical through the Lausanne Covenant.
Yeah.
And we didn't really have any kind of bureaucracy like that, I guess.
Yeah.
And it was just like not something we planned, I guess, really. It's just like people, like there was a small group in Barnard, like one girl my wife discipled. She was a Barnard student, and she just led her whole like sweet dorm to Christ.
Wow.
Like in like 5-6 weeks. So
Wow.
like, and then so it's sort of like, I guess, a movement feel, like early church
Yeah.
kind of, and people
Yeah.
started coming to Christ. Young people started being supercharged, and just there was momentum built like that. And so, eventually we hired a broker to see if we could meet at a theater.
Yeah.
In Union Square.
Yeah.
We really liked it,
Okay.
Union Square.
Union Square.
And it's really expensive there, but we prayed and prayed, and they said that the GM at the AMC said that she hosted a church before in Kansas City where AMC corporate is, and she had a really good experience with that.
The movie theater.
The movie theater.
Okay.
Yeah. This is before like it really like became a thing. Like a lot of people now meet at AMC's all throughout the
Yeah,
country.
I was gonna say, I was like, it became like movie theaters became a venue for
Yeah.
a lot of
And it made a
churches.
lot of sense to AMC because they were struggling financially.
Yeah.
That Sunday hour morning that no one is showing up.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so our broker was like, "Are you sure? Like you're saying yes to this?" She was like, "Yeah, why? What's the problem?" Because I asked a lot of theaters in Manhattan, and they said, "No, I would never do that."
Wow.
And I just like, the broker was like, "I just don't want to tell these young guys, like they got it, and like you're confused about something." and she was like, "No, like yeah, let's do the contract."
Wow.
And we were the first theater, AMC, I think, church theater in Manhattan,
Wow.
using a movie theater.
Yeah.
And they told us, the broker said, out of all the contracts we ever signed, yours was the fastest we ever got.
Wow.
We're like, well, praise God.
Yeah,
So
praise God.
obviously the spirit hand was on us supernaturally. That part was supernatural. So that was a blessing to be able to have a place to meet, and a major center of commerce and cultural center in New York. So
yeah, amazing.
Everybody likes to eat lunch in Union Square. So.
Yeah, it's like great location.
And this, I'm not sure if this is important or pertinent or anything, but on Sundays, for whatever reason, there's tons of parking.
Tons of parking?
Yeah. So families have an easy time commuting in.
Yeah.
Because we have commuters coming from everywhere, not just Manhattan.
Yeah.
So like Hoboken, different parts of Jersey, Staten
Yeah.
Island, like people drive in. So
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Yeah. Amazing. and you guys are growing strong still. And
Yeah, I mean,
growing.
you know, church planning is always difficult. I
Yeah.
akin church planning to um, part Chronicles of Narnia, part Lord of the Rings.
Okay. Yeah.
One part of the church planning story people tell
Yeah.
is sort of naive and
Uh,
like a sitcom, everything resolves in 40 minutes.
yeah.
And it's kind of cute, you know, like people all reconcile, the witch is defeated.
Mm,
But I find church planning experience more like Lord of the Rings.
mm,
People hungry for power, a
yeah.
lot of narcissism, a lot of mess.
Hmm.
And it's sort of in between those two storylines.
Yeah.
Um, there are seasons where you want to die
Mm,
because of the betrayal, because of the heartache, because of
mm,
um, the disappointment.
yeah.
But then there are times where Christmas comes, like in Narnia.
Yeah.
It's not always winter, it's Christmas.
Yeah.
But it's somewhere in the middle.
Mm,
Um, it's not uh, completely dark and not completely light.
yeah. Yeah.
So, yeah.
Great analogy.
Yeah.
Um, awesome. And amongst all these things you're doing, planning a church, leading ministry, um, being father, husband, you managed to write a book. And I definitely wanted to talk a little bit about it. A Holy Haunting. Why faith isn't a leap, but a series of staggers from one safe place to another.
Hmm.
Love that description. Could you tell us, a little bit more about this book? What inspired you to write it? Who did you have in mind as your audience?
Yeah. So there are three buckets, three audiences for the book. Um, the first audience would be my colleagues that I met in the academy,
Mm,
who are all 100% evolutionist. So
mm,
without an evolutionary framework of a concept of origins, they wouldn't even listen to you about
mm.
what reality is made of.
Okay.
So, and for me, I mean, I also believe in evolution as the best explanation for how God created the universe.
Mm,
I'm not saying that's an empirical fact. It's the closest thing to an empirical fact, as Francis Collins would say, as a biologist and a chemist that, you know, basically studied the human genome, the DNA.
mm.
Sort of like, you know, Ethereum and Bitcoin has blockchain and receipts
Yeah.
for every transaction. There's that in the human DNA.
Okay.
And we have
Yeah.
common ancestry.
Yeah.
So I wanted to give a framework for faith that begins with that.
Okay.
A evolutionary framework for faith that begins with evolution.
Mm.
And which is sort of a hot take, I guess, in
Yes.
some ways. That's why I don't deal with any other controversial issues. Like I didn't really deal with distributive justice in this book.
Okay.
I don't deal with LGBT, which was a criticism of my book, actually, but some of the reviews. Because I wanted
Yeah.
to deal with people in the Midwest, especially those in NASA, those in
Yeah.
STEM, that struggle with this issue,
Yeah.
science and faith being compatible.
Yeah. It's a very focused
So
topic.
my beginning readers were, friends at Harvard and Yale, and I wanted to make sure that if they read it, they wouldn't say, "Hey, that's anecdotal.
Okay.
There's no evidence for that."
Yeah.
I wanted to give enough evidence where they go, "Huh, I consider that."
Okay. Yeah.
So it was for the secular elite. And for especially for places like Singapore and Korea, the tiger countries in Asia that I have a heart for,
Mm-hmm.
that's, I believe, very important emerging leadership coming in the future.
Yeah.
They all have evolutionary frameworks as well, especially Seoul. Everyone in the academy is an evolutionist. They believe human beings are animals without the imago Dei. But without that entry point in the back door, there's not even a conversation about faith because they believe that the church is subjected to emotionalism and to manipulation. And a lot of it is just populism.
Okay. Yeah.
So that's sort of the why to the elite, I wanted to give a compatibility of science and faith and how to reconcile that in the middle. What if they're not enemies? What if they're companions? And I use modern day theories from the Harvard School of Education, psychology, and everyone like that. So that's the first. Second, like me, the idea of deconstructing. I think there is a dark sort of dark moment for every Christian living in urban areas, especially when you encounter frailty and death of parents, friends, and the world.
Yeah.
If the Christian faith is actually true, doubts lingering, doubts about, not because your parents believe it or because you feel it, is it intellectually true? Because if the resurrection really did happen and Jesus is who he said he was, then everything changes. It has eternal significance, like Lewis says. But I think without that question, without really going through those doubts, I think a lot of how we live is tribalism. And so Christians might not verbalize this, but I've heard it sort of echoed through the grapevines many times in doing ministry and outside of the church. Like, what if this isn't true?
Okay. Yeah.
Like, what if this isn't real? I mean, there are there are apologetics, there are all this, but that season of the dark nights of the soul. And if you go to the center of the New Testament narrative of the resurrection account, I mean, it's church tradition that you doubt the resurrection on the day of the resurrection. Like,
it's a tradition?
It's a tradition. All the disciples doubted the resurrection.
I see. Okay.
They doubted it so much, in fact, that when the women told them, they said, "You're out of your mind," with some profanities in between. They heard it, he has risen, but it didn't register. Even though Jesus told them for 3.5 years, "I'm going to die and rise again." Yeah, but how could you? So they weren't lunatics. So Easter, the story of Easter doesn't start with robust faith. It starts with incessant doubt. So wherever your story is, whether you have you're full of faith or full of doubt or somewhere in between, Easter is everyone's story because you find yourself in that story. And I feel like we moved away from that because Christianity became dominant, Anno Domini, the year of our Lord. Western culture was built, and because of the veracity of the resurrection, of course. But I think as you move further away from those 2,000 years, you ask yourself, what is your faith built on? Obviously, you didn't see the crucifixion. You didn't see the resurrection. It's retrospective faith. You have to look back to move forward, even to look to the future. So there are spiritual refugees, I call it in chapter 3 in the church, and they're silent. They're moving on silently, though. And there's no really way to verbalize, hey, I don't know if this is true. They don't want to be a Debbie Downer. How do you tell your friend or your worship leader or your pastor or your friends that, hey, I'm not sure if I believe anymore. Like, I'm having some doubts. Like, it's very difficult to share that. And I felt like many college students go through it. So I just wanted to say, hey, you're not alone. I went through this myself. But when you come back to the narrative of the New Testament, your doubts are good. Faith is not opposed to doubt. It's actually part of the process. And then when the disciples were able to grapple with their doubts and verbalize them like Thomas, God met them where they were, and they became stronger as a result. It became robust faith as a result from that crucible of doubt. So that's the second. And the third audience is the church reaching its external environment. We're not very good at reaching the culture. Tim Keller was amazing at that. I mean, he started Home Movement as a result. Very unlikely candidate to do that. He was like the fourth person chosen to lead Redeemer. I said the last resort. No one would want to do it because who wants to go plant a church in the 80s in New York, right? But he was really good at reading the culture. I think the church sometimes sacrifices the culture because of its idols. And I feel like this could help the church start a conversation how to reach those in the academy, in the walls behind the church, and how to engage that audience again, and to be a resource. And it launched actually with the Christian Union which is a ministry to the Ivy League.
Okay.
In every
Yeah.
Ivy League plus Stanford.
Okay.
So we launched the book there to try to help people reach the people outside of the walls of the church, and those who might be you think are far further away from faith.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I mean, as someone who has had my season of doubt, I'm still working through your book. It's a lot of like, I don't know, I'm usually more of a fiction kind of guy, so I'm trying to engage something more academic, more evidence based. I know you've done a lot of research in this book, but there are definitely parts that speak to me. And you mentioned before spiritual refugees in chapter 3. You talked about spiritual puberty, which you had mentioned was one of the harder chapters to write.
It was very hard,
but it puts things into perspective for someone who has doubt. Okay, you're seeing the journey from like a different perspective. Maybe if you could talk a little bit more.
So that was sort of my contribution to the apologetics literature. It's like Lewis and Chesterton and others have shared their faith rooted in their cultural context. So for Lewis, probably the most enduring apologetics literature even today would be faith through philosophy, and that idea that MLK uses, right? Like the categorical imperative, which is morality. The shoulds that we have shows that we have a standard. So he uses philosophy as his sort of major argument for why God exists, because if there's a law within the heart of man, then there's a lawgiver. Chesterton, he uses narrative through stories. He goes, if I find myself in a story in orthodoxy, he goes, there must be a storyteller. For me, I try to root that apologetics in our cultural context, which is the age of psychology, where we're not arguing as much anymore about why faith exists, why faith is true. I go more into the idea of discovering faith internally, that it's actually baked in the evolutionary process. It's a visceral reality within ourselves. Just like when we go through puberty, like I talk about in chapter 2, how, my explanation for girls in the first grade was that they must be long-haired aliens from a galaxy far away, and I want to throw them down the stairs. I don't understand what I have in common with them. Why would anyone love these creatures? They refuse to join
very young
first grade, like burping contests. Like they think it's gross. It's the coolest thing at school. Moms are not very helpful at that age. They say no to everything. And when I heard in Sunday school, God created Eve to be a helper, I was like, no, that's not existentially true. So struggling with the first bouts of agnosticism in the first, second grade, you're 8, 9 years old. You're like, God must have made a mistake, or God might not must be real, because that's not true to my experience. So you have all these theories about life that that's the whole idea of the evolution of consciousness. You try to make sense, make meaning of your experience, and you could only give your experience based on how much experience you have. And so when you're driven by experience and you keep experiencing life, you come to a point like puberty where you're in the 4th grade and everything changes. I was completely a skeptic of love. And then in the 4th grade, I became a worshiper. I became an idolater of love. The altar of love was everything in my life changed in the 4th grade. Getting a girlfriend and everything else. Those are the 2 categories in my life. So what happened? I went from being a skeptic to a worshiper. I think in the same way, as you experience life, the frailty, the darkness, the doubt, what begins to happen, there's a spiritual puberty. This time is not taking place in the body, but it's taking in the soul. You ask questions. and you start to discover there's way more than I think or what I thought. And so I say in the book that in the first to third grade, like my thoughts about human nature was based on ignorance, not anything about human nature. This is me just trying to make meaning.
Yeah.
So spiritual puberty is that rebirth in the same way of something taking place within yourself. Like David Brooks says one time, and the New York Times op-ed columnist, he says that a friend told him that I love my children way more than evolution requires. So there's this transcending part that takes place in human experience where this love is foreign or alien, and it's not of this world. And it's not even inside of me. It's sort of imprinted on me, but it's not part of me. And then you're like, where's that from?
Yeah.
Where's this altruistic sense of for my children come from? Because it's another organ, another part. So that's when you start grappling with something greater than myself, transcendence, beauty, meaning. And that's where the faith questions begin to emerge.
Yeah.
And I say that's the story of conversion in the New Testament, right? You go from skepticism to worship. And faith is not linear, it's sinuous. Yeah, it's circular, right? It's not sometimes it gets worse before it gets better. Sometimes, you take you go backwards before forwards. It's a journey. Yeah. Like the Beatles say, a long winding road. And it's not one size fit all. So
definitely.
So when people say, well, I believe this, I believe that. Well, how many things you believed in first grade do you believe now? Well, you don't believe in many of those things, right? Because it's been refined by experience. And so that's the vehicle I use, experience, meaning making as the idea of spiritual puberty. So that's why people come to faith sometimes later in life or in the beginning, because you're trying to process experience.
Yeah.
And sometimes the physical and the emotional the tensions of those two domains don't explain the problems, the confining problems in your life. They're spiritual. They're transcending problems. And the transcending problems is what leads to faith. Yeah.
Wow. I'm curious, how did you, so with this sort of almost like scientific evidence-based approach to explaining things, how did you do research on it? Is it mostly Bible reading? I'm sure lots of scripture analysis, but then did you also have sort of what's sort of the outside external research that you're engaging into to write this book? I'm curious.
Yeah, well, the chapter 2, the spiritual puberty part, was hard to write because I had to balance academic research that's built on a body of knowledge that developmental psychologists would all know. Anyone who have taken psychology to a certain extent, like Jean Piaget's epistemologist of studying human knowledge with children, with Robert Kegan's idea as like how children develop emotionally. So Piaget developed a physical sort of part of development or consciousness. Like why a baby going from 1 to 12, how they go from, not being able to think about anything abstract to being able to think about theoretical concepts. And how you wrap your mind around like concepts like math and experience. So like Jean Piaget, he's an epistemologist, studies knowledge. So why do we get knowledge, and why do we think about these things? How do we get there? That developmental process. That's the physical. He was a complete evolutionist. Like he didn't believe the emotional component. He just believed human beings are animals that are trying to survive in their environment. So he talks about the tension between the organism and their environment. Completely evolutionary biology. But John Piaget, who's the founder at Harvard School of Education of the concept called the evolution of consciousness. So I take the evolution of consciousness to the evolution of spiritual consciousness, and I link it together because Robert Kegan takes Jean Piaget's sort of theories of mapping childhood development and integrates it into his development of how children develop emotionally. How do you develop physically and how you develop emotionally? Because Robert Keegan thought that map of the physical part of human development, kids, was brilliant. But as a psychologist, child psychologist, he felt like Jean Piaget was missing the emotional component.
Yeah.
Because we don't just develop physically. We also develop,
Yeah.
organism just doesn't struggle to that tension between their environment and, right? They also struggle with, the self and the other. How do I get along with my parents, my friends, the people I relate to? So he goes, what if we integrated those two things and call it the evolution of consciousness? And so he goes, if we created it, that's how human development works. And then I said, basically in chapter 2, well, that's all true. But what about the confounding tensions that we have that are transcending, that are not related to the contours of mind and body, psychology, and the physical domain? What about the spiritual? And I think Keegan missed, as a psychologist, the spiritual tensions.
Yeah, spiritual tension.
The spiritual tensions is what leads to what I call spiritual consciousness. Just like you become aware emotionally, you become physically when you're a baby. That's the first kind of domain, right? You become aware of your body. You become aware of your soul and your emotions. And then through experience, you also get to experience the transcending tensions, the spiritual. So I was trying to create a new map and suggest, hey, what if they're all three? Not just two.
Yeah.
Right? What if there's no, because theology, psychology, and evolutionary biology sort of thought it was tertiary. Like that's like, archaic ideas. Let's just throw the baby with the bathwater out. But did we throw it out too soon?
Yeah.
Because the confounding problems that we're talking about today are all spiritual problems.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
So
like we mentioned culture before.
Yeah.
Like today's culture is, we're not just like surviving is like a given almost.
Yeah.
People are trying to like realize their ambitions, realize their identity, and self-actualization, is like most of what, that's why there's so much like probably talk about mental health these days, right? And it's like, sure, back then, maybe hundreds of years ago, we were trying to just survive, right? But now it's like we're in the age of society where we're trying to, we've got the food, we've got this things to survive. We're just trying to, I don't know, feel like purpose and things like that. So, and that's, I'm sure where, the spiritual yearning comes from.
Yeah. And it's ironic because we doubled the life expectancy through science and medicine. But yet, the first or second leading cause of death for our youngest minted young adults are suicide, and depression. So we double our life expectancy, and now our youngest minted adults are struggling with death. Why is that? Well, even if you have the physical need met, and emotional needs met, without a transcending purpose, a transcending arc, life is futile. Life is meaningless. So we come back around again. So that, again, faith is not linear, it's sinuous, cyclical, comes back. And that's where we have the conversation of faith, I think.
Yeah. A couple more questions on the book. What do you think is the main, if you kind of like distill it down, what would you like the readers, whether they're believers or skeptics, somewhere in between, to ultimately take away from this book?
Yeah. I think in the end, in the final chapter, I talk about crossing the swamp of doubt. Obviously, we're going to have doubts, we're going to have questions. But if you really wanted to know the God of the universe, what I say is pray that he'll show you existentially of his unconditional love for you. I talk about just briefly about miracles won't do it. Coincidences won't do it. Signposts won't do it. You'll keep asking for them over and over, and it'll become stranger and stranger, and you'll go further away. I think I culminate kind of the book's idea to Thomas's experience with Jesus, when Thomas, as a skeptic, or a lot of people make him sort of the doubt. They call him Doubting Thomas, and the truth is, his experience wasn't any really different. In contrast to the other disciples, he just wasn't there when Jesus showed up after the resurrection. I mean, he kind of missed the party. And he just said to them, I won't believe you, because this could be like a really insidious joke.
Yeah.
And people call him Doubting Thomas, but he was just sort of the New Testament's prototype of the sane man, the rational man that won't believe in someone coming back from the dead, which should encourage us all.
Yeah.
But at the same time, if anyone could take anything from the book, Jesus complying to his request to touch his side and hands wasn't a miracle. The miracle already happened. He saw him. But Jesus's posture, God's posture toward us to comply with our doubts, to enter our doubts and darkness, is not a miracle. It's a display of love. And I say, when that love is poured through the Holy Spirit, when that love is poured out, wherever you might be, whatever darkness, how great your doubts are, how great your darkness is, that love is greater.
Yeah. Amen.
And when you experience that love, everything changes. Yeah. And so Jesus didn't comply to Thomas's request because he needed to. He did it because he's a God of love.
Yeah.
In our doubts, in our darkness, wherever we might be in our journey. And that's why he enters everyone's story who asks of him to come, open their hands and say, if you're real, come into my life and change it. He always does.
Yeah.
Like Revelations 3:20. Anyone who stands at the door, right, and hears me knock and open, I will come in. Yeah. So that's the major takeaway.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that sounds like it would be. I don't know anyone who hasn't experienced doubt in their, spiritual journey. So I'll definitely.
Yeah. Yeah.
If you need a resource.
Yep.
Yeah. So thank you for writing this. I wanted to talk a little bit more about that topic in general, actually, and as well as a little bit out of my own curiosity about, because you have such a science approach to things and science background, medicine background. Would love to pick your brain a little bit more about that. But if you could maybe a little bit more personally, like, what was your journey with doubt like? And how has it shaped your faith?
Yeah. Well, in Spiritual Refugees, I begin my own story of deconstruction in college when my dad called me one evening about my mom having a stroke.
Yep.
And I say that, like a Trojan horse, doubt entered. And I had this thought while I was crying, like just stream of tears. I created a pool of water with mucus on. And I realized that I was just crying for hours when my mucus touched the carpet of the college dorm room. And I said, at least I'll see, because it sounded like a whimper. My dad, he was actually a very buoyant, kind of confident person. It just kind of sounded like, because he was really shaken up. Like, I'll probably not see my mom again alive. And at that moment, I found some comfort and alleviated sort of my concern thinking about heaven. But then a dark, insidious voice whispered, what if heaven isn't real? And that's sort of when everything unraveled for me. Like, why do I believe this? Is it true? I couldn't shake off the the question. And
seemed like an especially vulnerable moment too
yeah,
for that thing
yeah,
to pop up. It's like,
yeah. And I tell the story of my own deconstruction, Christian cliches, and um, even praying in tongues wouldn't have helped at that time. Like, tongues sort of broke through everything in my life until then, just like spiritual breakthrough, and a lot of times even still. But that was so personal about this idea, eschatology, about the future, the end of things, just the idea of heaven, and this worldview being, is it really true?
Mhm.
Or is faith just a leap on a whim?
Mm.
You know, at best, it's a delusion. I mean, a what do I say?
The placebo.
A placebo. You know,
Yeah.
at best, it's a
Yeah.
placebo. At worst, it's a delusion.
Yeah.
And you know, like Christian cliches and prayer, all that just wouldn't have helped at that time. And I was like, you know, I really have to investigate this
Mm.
for myself and know that this is of eternal consequence. This is really true. I'm going to give my life to this if it's true, but if it's not, um, yeah, I think, yeah.
Mhm.
So that's sort of where the story of my own deconstruction takes place, and why it's actually personal, because afterwards I couldn't share with anyone. And for about 18 months, I went through a period of depression, just like, because like,
Yeah.
what I given my life, every the underpinnings of my life, everything, my foundation was sort of like broken. And so, but that dark night of the soul eventually led to robust faith, even greater conviction. Um, and that's where I come up with the veracity of scripture, the historicity of the resurrection. Even though those things all came about, it's actually the major sort of breakthrough, I think, was I even experienced a miracle
Mm.
that
That's miracle.
yeah, if you read the book,
Yeah.
I tell you it, but I just give you a small recap. The miracle was,
Your mom at that
yeah,
time through it
she did survive,
survived. Yeah.
as did my faith.
Yeah.
Um, Parallels, but I asked God while throwing out the garbage in my freshman year or sophomore year, I remember exactly. Um, and what college student really throws out their garbage? That was a miracle in itself, kind of. And I just mumbled going out because it was like an 18-month struggle. I was just like in my head, and I was like, God, if you're real. That was like the middle of April, right? So spring is here, and I was like, God, make it snow, then I'll believe. And I just threw my garbage out, and 5 minutes later, began to blizzard, like,
Wow.
right.
Yeah.
And a lot of people think like Thomas, you know, you would fall, go, "Oh, my Lord and my God," like you fall on your knees and you repent. I was like, oh, this is just coincidence.
Yeah.
And that was a very important part of my story, because I think I needed to be like understand the idea of salvation,
Mhm.
because in hindsight, I learned even a miracle wouldn't have convinced me. Just like the miracle of resurrection wouldn't convince anybody. It's the love of God that convinces you. So God's like, I did that so that you would see that I love you even in your doubt and even as a sinner. Most people maybe would have turned. You wouldn't. That's how stubborn you are. That's how evil your heart is.
Yeah.
And I was like, so it gave me a mission for people sort of hard nosed like me, who are maybe, you know, skeptics and antagonistic to faith, to say, prove this.
Yeah.
Sort of the heart behind the book, you know, as a personal thing, to show people that, hey, the love of God will melt you down, like will pursue you and win you over.
Yeah.
It's not the miracles, it's not even the intellectual part of the book that's
Yeah.
going to save you. It's going to be the existential experience of the love of God that will change you forever.
Yeah.
So
That's the bottom line. Yeah.
yeah.
I love that.
Yeah.
you kind of touched on this a little, maybe kind of mentioned it earlier about this book is very focused on this topic.
Yeah.
I'm just out of curiosity. Yeah, do you have ideas or ambitions to write another book? Perhaps there's maybe a little preview or something. But is there another topic that you feel passionately you would want to address? Because this was a book where I feel like you identified, something that Christian church was facing and addressed it. Is there another thing that you feel, is coming up that needs to be addressed?
Yeah.
Maybe not necessarily write a book on it, but maybe.
Yeah, I do have an
something.
idea for another book. It sort of plays into the plight that I talk about in the book. I talk about the Christian idea of deconstruction, but I also think that the mental health crisis is alarming. I mean, I know the data. There's so much havoc in the inner life in the modern world today, and I feel like both believers and non-believers are struggling. National Science Foundation said that 85% of our thoughts are negative and 95% of our thoughts are repetitive.
Well,
so
that
like almost 100%, like 95% of the time, we're filled with toxicity, catastrophe. We're spiraling out of control. And so a book I did want to write, if I did write another one, would be how to cope with those train of thoughts. I think there are about 3,608 thought worms that move from one end to the other every day, 24 hours.
Thought worms?
Thought worms, so like they move in and out, of the mind,
Oh,
yeah. So trains of thought, right?
Okay.
Yeah, and they're the curvature, they're moving in and out, and so the mental health battle is dealing with these trains of thought, and sometimes when we get caught up in a lot of negativity, we don't know how to get off the train, those trains of thought.
Yeah.
So my idea was write a book about how to get off the train, how to get off the bus, or whatever analogy works, because
get off the subway.
Get off the subway, get off the train. Because there are stops in the train, and if you rode it, you can get off of it. So that's the whole idea, to get off sooner than later. Ideally to stop the most progressive, pervasive kind of thing would be suicide ideation, right? For people giving up their, ending their lives. I mean, you look at, there was another K-pop star that ended their life.
Yeah.
Just today.
But today? I was thinking of one like 2 weeks ago.
Yeah, just today. I saw on the news today. But the real battle is depression. Depression is like, it really dismantles your life. And I want to help believers and unbelievers both be more productive in their lives, and also give a lens of the gospel, how we can cope with negativity, because like Jeremiah 29:11, God has a future in it. I believe there's no more beautiful news today than that God says, I don't mean to harm you. I want to give you a future and a hope. Just like a lot of people don't read John 3:17.
After John 3:16.
John 3:16, right? God did not send his son into the world to condemn the world, but to save the world. And so how to provide that redemptive lens in the mental health crisis is something I would, and if I could help just a few people get out of their negative thought worms and embrace a growing mindset, that would be great. It'd be great value added to society. So
I totally agree.
Yeah.
I wholeheartedly encourage for this writing of this book. I mean, especially what I watch on like social media these days, YouTube. The last few years, YouTube has been saturated with like not even qualified people, just YouTubers talking about mental health things. Something about increasing your productivity, finding your meaning, which is, I'm sure people find helpful, which is, all the power to them. But a lot of it is based on anecdotal
Yeah.
experience,
Yeah.
right? Their own. They made it, so maybe they have something to say.
Yeah.
These people. Um, a lot of it's not Christian.
Yeah.
A lot
Yeah.
of it is, worldly success.
Yeah.
And,
Yeah. Yeah.
and so I I think that would be
Mm.
wonderful. Yeah. Um, yeah. There's just I guess to kind of wrap things up
Mhm.
soon. I wanted to um kind of speak on your expertise as right now a pastor leading a church. Um, this show is all about always trying to encourage people either trying to pursue something similar,
Mhm.
maybe other people who are going into seminary who are watching this show, or just to educate, inspire. I'm curious, this is a more general question, but um, specifically in New York City, um, what role do you see the church playing in the broader cultural and social landscape in New
Mhm.
York City? We've
Yeah.
touched about it, we
Mhm.
talked about the culture.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
and it's a big thing at my church that we
Yeah.
talk about,
Yeah.
COTC. Pastor John mentions culture a lot.
Yeah.
Um, Kind of just, as we wrap this up, kind of food for thought,
Yeah.
for anyone watching about, wanting to pursue ministry.
Mhm.
Um, yeah, I put to you that question, what role?
Yeah. So in all major urban centers, the loneliness compounds.
Mm,
Uh,
glad you said
Studies
that.
show that more than half don't have a friend, feel left out, don't have one person to speak to about how their day is going.
Mm,
And also, studies also show it only takes 8 minutes to get someone out of a funk.
mm-hmm.
So, um, if the church, in a social, logical, cultural lens,
Yeah.
would like to change the temperature, the spiritual temperature of a city, as an ethicist, I would say the city that is so good at creating venture capital is so poor at creating social capital.
Mm,
And people are more disconnected, more lonely, more wasted,
yeah.
um, and more isolated than ever.
Mm-hmm.
How do you create community? And the greatest call of our time is not productivity, it's presence. How do you
Mm,
practice presence at a cafe, at a dinner, um, at a movie theater,
yeah.
um, at a park?
Yeah.
If you can cultivate social capital, you'll reach the highest of highs and the lows of the lows. Um, and people's lives will change because Jesus's major mission or major mandate is, if I could do anything with anyone, is to eat a meal.
Yeah.
That's what
Yeah.
it says in Revelation 3:20, right? And we are his hands and feet.
Mm,
I would say if you want to change the landscape, it's not uh, elitism. It's not through achievement. It's not through um, climbing the corporate ladder, even though those things are nice.
yeah.
Every single person that achieves anything in their deathbed won't say, "Hey, let me hold my diploma one more time.
Yeah.
Show me my bank account." No, they go, "Bring me my kids. Let me hug them one more time. Let me hold them one more time."
Mm-hmm. Mm,
It's all about touching skin. It's all
yeah.
about one more meal. It's all about one more conversation. And so, again, I would say the greatest call of our time, it's not efficacy, it's not efficiency, it's not productivity. It's practicing the gift of presence
Yeah.
and time.
Mm-hmm.
So create community.
Mm,
And I hope that it's not just a safe community, even though that's a tall order.
yeah.
But I hope it's not soft. Safe but not
Yeah.
soft. Yeah,
I
that's
love
what I would
that.
say.
That I think would be a perfect note to end on, Pastor
Yeah.
Sam.
Yeah.
In the words of all the great rappers, that was a mic drop moment.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, but yeah, thank you so much for your time and your insight and for sharing your book with us. Yeah, that was, I'm just going to wrap things up here. Thank you, Pastor Sam, again. That was another episode of The Pursuit. If you enjoyed this content and like to, watch more about Christians and entrepreneurs and leaders in New York City pursuing, um, after their passions pursuing the things that God has called them to, please continue watching. Subscribe if you haven't already, and like this video. And we'll definitely have more content for you. Pastor Sam, thank you again. People can find your book on Amazon,
Everywhere. Yeah.
everywhere.
Mhm.
Yep. Holy Haunting.
Mhm.
So thank you again, Pastor Sam.
Thank you.
Yeah.
All right. Conversation.